Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Chief Healthcare Officer podcast show, where we explore the future of healthcare through the lens of leadership, innovation, and real world experience. I'm your host, Dr. Fatih Mehmet Gul, and today I have the great pleasure of welcoming another great guest who has works lots of initiatives, and then his works has shaped how physicians approach innovation, business, and digital transformation in healthcare. Dr. Arlen Meyers is a president and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, an organization that has become the global platform for doctors who want to bring their ideas to the life. He is also a professor emeritus at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, where he held roles across ENT, I will not say otolaryngology, so then let's make it easy, dentistry and engineering. He's a Fulbright scholar and the founder of multiple startups, including Medvoy, and we will hear the details from him, and a respected voice on the intersection of medicine, entrepreneurship, and technology. Dr. Arlen, it's a truly privilege to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
I really appreciate. Dr. Arlen, we can have lots of discussions about your background and then the issues, I'm sure. But then I'm sure my followers will be happy to hear your background from your side first. Let's hear from your side what you have done. What was the motivation for you moving from a head and neck surgeon to the startup and then innovations and entrepreneurship manager? You have a very interesting journey. Could you please share us your journey?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me again. So my story basically is I grew up in the east part of the United States in Philadelphia. I went to school back east. And then after doing my training in medical school and residency, I was recruited to the University of Colorado to be on the faculty. So basically, I was recruited out of my training, and this was back in the mid-'70s. And one thing led to another. I went through a fairly standard academic pipeline, sort of moved up the food chain through the academic ranks, and eventually, during my tenure, myself and I was a pretty standard academic surgeon, teaching research, patient care, going to meetings, all that stuff, serving on committees and national board, whatever. And during my tenure, I graduated business school in the mid '80s, and it was a very early time when doctors generally did not go to business school. Things, of course, have changed a lot in the last 40, 50 years, but in those days, I was the only doctor in the class. I just had an interest in the business of medicine, and that goes back to my parents and where I grew up and sort of growing up experiences. But anyway, I wound up at the University of Colorado as an academic head and neck surgeon. My subspecialty interest was in oral cancer, and we had published a lot of stuff on oral cancer, books about it, etc. And during that tenure, myself and a bunch of other people, including some engineers, so some photonics people, some physicists, and other entrepreneur business people, invented a gadget that optically detects cancer in the mouth. So essentially, it was a device that used biophotonic technology to be like a Geiger counter for cancer in the mouth. And the problem we were trying to solve was that when a patient came to see an otolaryngologist or someone with a mouth lesion, we wanted to know whether the patient wanted to know it was a cancer. Well, we had to go through a lot of rigmarole with taking a biopsy and sending it to pathology and looking for margins and all that. And it was a pain for me. It was a pain, more importantly, to the patient. So the idea was, is there some way that we could sort of illuminate, optically differentiate, and eventually get rid of the tumor in the clinic in one visit using this device? Well, the long story is that, or the short version is that we did not get this idea across the goal line. We went through traditional tech transfer. We did all kinds of stuff with finding money. We went through the patenting process. We did a lot of the steps, but we couldn't get this thing over the goal line. And at this point in time, I was pretty clueless about how to do this. I was a traditional academic surgeon who was doing what I was supposed to do, but I really didn't have a whole lot of understanding of the nuances of how to get an idea to a patient. So I looked around and I said, well, I need some help because I don't know what I'm doing. And I have this gadget, but I don't know what to do with it. So I looked around at various educational programs. There were none. I looked around for entrepreneurship education for doctors, particularly those that were in academic medicine. There were none. I looked around for people that were interested in giving me maybe money or how to raise money for the idea. Extremely limited. I were looking for networks like, well, somebody must have done this before. Who can I talk to, particularly an ENT that's done this? Very few. So to be more specific to your question, the reason why we decided, myself and some other people, decided to create the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs was to exactly address that problem. How do we help people get their idea to a patient when they have very little knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies to do it?
Very interesting. And also, you're telling us a story while exploring all this kind of entrepreneurship. You did not leave the medicine. So you ran your clinic, you have continued to manage your patients, but at the same time, you tried to manage this entrepreneurship. So many, areas when we have the discussion, people, they always position the entrepreneurship, especially for physicians or the caregivers, that you have to stop your work, you have to just focus on the entrepreneurship, start your startup company and then manage this accordingly. So in your story, it is a bit different. So can we manage both together? How did it work for you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. In fact, so let's just back up a little bit. There's, if you ask 100 people, what's the definition of physician entrepreneurship? You're going to get 100 different answers. My particular definition is that healthcare or sick care or whatever you want to call it, entrepreneurship, physician entrepreneurship, is the pursuit of opportunity under volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous so-called VUCA conditions. And the goal of all of this is to create user or stakeholder-defined value through the deployment and dissemination of innovation using a viable business model to accomplish specific objectives and key results. In this case, the so-called quintuple or sextuple aims. There's this aims creep going on, but the basic idea is quality, cost, patient experience, doctor experience, and value at the end of the day, and accessibility, equitable access. So that's my definition. Now, there are multiple ways of satisfying that definition other than just creating a startup and just giving up your practice or whatever you're doing. So you go down this road to create a startup. There's absolutely nothing wrong with creating a tech startup, and that gets most of the press. But the fact of the matter is that there are multiple ways that if you are interested in this, that you can satisfy the definition. For example, intrapreneurships, people who are employees of a hospital system, I don't care where it is in the world, and they're counting on you to innovate within the hospital system. I don't care whether you're an employed physician in the United States, you're working for the National Health Service in Britain, you're working for some centralized plan throughout the Middle East or in Asia. I don't care where it is, but the point is you're there to create value. So that's intrapreneurship. You could be a social entrepreneurship or a public health entrepreneurship anywhere in the world, and God knows we need those people. You could be a techpreneur, which I just described. You could be an edupreneur. In other words, you're trying to, in educational technology, particularly in this day and age with artificial intelligence, how do you use artificial intelligence to teach people how to use artificial intelligence? And that's an international problem. So there are lots of, or you could be a service provider. I mean, we have people in our network who say, you know what, I like practicing medicine, or I didn't like practicing medicine, so I decided to do something else. And they become investment bankers. They become angel investors. They become limited or general partners in a venture firm. They become wealth managers. Or marketing or sales or all the other stuff that I didn't know anything about when I went down this road. And now we have a bunch of doctors doing it. So that's the basic idea. So to answer your question, there's lots of ways you can do this to supplement your interest in clinical medicine or to replace your interest in clinical medicine. They take different roads and different roadmaps, and we can talk about that. But I want to make the point that you just don't have to drop everything to create a company and call yourself a physician entrepreneur.
I think we need to empower the innovation, and then we need to empower our people, because what we see together with our people, each one of them, they have amazing ideas. I mean, I have seen the similar thing as your story. One of my orthopedists in my previous hospital, he has created a different kind of screws and the things for the knee replacement, but I didn't know how to get it licensed, how to get it patent, and then the other thing. And not just the physicians. I had a nurse in my two previous hospital before. She was looking for a kind of a breastfeeding solution for the mothers, and she was recommending something, and she was a bit hesitant, and we were recommending her, and we were trying to empower her, but then she couldn't move actually in her venue. So I think at the end of the day, you said the magic word. It is about the innovation, and we need to create the innovation culture, and we need to foster this. And I'm sure there will be many people, they will come up with the ideas, they will try to do something. But your story is amazing. I mean, you were able to materialize your dream into the true product. And then you started also teaching other physicians, which we have plenty of such people. And I totally agree with you. It doesn't mean ending your clinic work and then starting something. You can keep both together. But I think we need to just empower the innovation for all caregivers in our hospital, not just the physicians. And I'm sure you have also came across with many other caregivers from the other professions too.
Yeah, well, the other point about the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, despite its name, it's an open innovation network. So what that means is that anybody can join. You don't have to be a healthcare professional. And whether that's a nurse practitioner or a PA or a dentist or a pharmacist or any other healthcare professional, it's a big world and there's a lot of room for ideas. And more specifically, when we created this organization, and it's an international nonprofit, it's not a for-profit enterprise, and we did that intentionally. But the point is that I don't believe that sick care, which is what I call it in the United States and in most places in the world, because it's not healthcare. We're not preventing illness. We're not dealing with public health problems. Most of it's spending money to take care of sick people. And the point is that I don't believe that sick care can be fixed from inside. In fact, I don't believe any industry can be fixed from inside. It requires an ecosystem of people from different, diverse, demographic, functional, industrial, and cognitive diversity backgrounds. Things just don't pop up out of the clear blue sky. That they're informed by lots and lots of different things. And this includes the international flavor of the thing. Because, number one, we're all facing the same problem, an almost infinite demand for care with limited resources. And number two, the world has become a pretty small place, despite the tariff conversation. We're doing this. I'm talking to you, you're in Doha, I'm in Denver, it's 8 time zones, whatever. So it's a pretty small world. And, a typical example, just prior to this call, I got a call from a person who just happens to be a otolaryngologist, but his story was pretty interesting. He has parents that are part Kuwaiti and part Irish. He went to medical school in Dublin. He's doing a residency in Canada and is coming back to the United States to do a fellowship, and he's interested in entrepreneurship in Kuwait. Well, those are the kinds of people that we...
Amazing. Amazing story.
Yeah.
We have many. I mean, I have many people here similar to this story. I have nurse, Lebanese, Australian, and then got her education from Canada, and she works here. And from here, she's planning to move to the U.S. And then similar people from Germany, and then originally from Albania, and working with us. And then previously, she was also working in UK. So I totally agree with you. The world is getting smaller and smaller, and at the end of the day, we're dealing with the same body wherever we go. It is the same human being. We have 8 billion same body that we have to deal with, and then we will take care of them. So same sickness, same thing, and then we need more entrepreneurial thing. Now I want to shift a bit to the technology, Dr. Arlen, and then definitely there is a buzzword everywhere now. It's about the AI. And you also did something for the AI. You called something AI entrepreneurship. So it's first time we're hearing. I think we need to hear the definition for this first. And what does it, I mean, have to do with the healthcare innovation and how we can use it? Can you shed some light on it?
Sure. So I came up with this term intrapreneurship instead of entrepreneurship. So there's lots of different sort of portmanteaus about combining words and just having fun with it. There's intrapreneurship, which we talked about. There's external entrepreneurship we talked about. And then I came up with this notion of intrapreneurship, which means it's the same definition that I gave you with physician or healthcare entrepreneurship, but the focus is on AI. So if you are a hospital doctor and you think you have a solution to a problem that involves artificial intelligence, whether you're self-employed, whether you're working externally, whether you're working within, you're on a mission to be an entrepreneur. In other words, how do you design, develop, and deploy an artificial intelligence solution to solve a particular problem? Now, that requires several things, and more specifically, in my opinion, because again, the mission of the society is to help you get your idea to a patient. Now, that idea can be anything: drugs, devices, diagnostics, digital health, care delivery, financial models, fixing a system, different business model. I don't care what it is. So it's either going to help a patient and add value to a patient, or it's going to fix a very broken system or one that is not efficient enough to take care of the population. So in this particular case, it's about artificial intelligence. Now, that requires a different sort of pathway, and actually each of the ones that I mentioned, drugs, devices, diagnostics, digital health, AI, they all have a different ecosystem in terms of how these things get designed, how they get developed and tested, how they get deployed, how they get paid for, how they get reimbursed, how they get used. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. But again, you need the education and the understanding of what is the roadmap, because the roadmap for a drug is very different than the roadmap for example, an artificial intelligence solution.
So you think this AI is going to expedite and accelerate the entrepreneurship roadmap, and then will help us to make things faster? Or what kind of additional benefit you think it will bring to the innovation and then the physician entrepreneurship activities?
Well, I think at this stage of the game, it's fair to say that the jury is out. I mean, there's a lot of hype about how AI can help you be blank with blank, better, cheaper, faster with drug discovery and development. I mean, you just fill in the blanks. Some of it is hype, some of it is real, and there's evidence to indicate. I mean, the latest example is, for example, we're going to use artificial intelligence to reduce burnout in physicians. And by that, I mean ambient artificial intelligence. And there's, as you know, there's a bunch of, for those who are not familiar with this, basically, you're in the examining room, you're talking to a patient, you have ambient AI, it converts the voice to text, and it inserts it into an EMR, medical records, or some such platform. Now, the idea is that this is supposed to reduce the amount of administrative work that the physician or the doctor needs to do. And the single biggest cause of burnout, at least in the United States, and I assume in other countries that have EHRs, is typing into the computer.
Same here.
They want to-
Same here. So EMRs, thanks to them, we have lots of mental issues with our physicians. So
Right.
it's a big issue. It is the same thing everywhere.
Right. But the problem is, so the issue is, and again, this is what problem are you trying to solve? If the problem is burnout, then, and more, there are evidence-based reports that yes, it does relieve burnout, however you define that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But the problem is it may not. In fact, it may actually add more work, because when you're seeing a patient and it gets translated and populates the electronic medical record, you just can't take it for granted that what you said is going to be accurate in the record. So you have to go over what is in the record and edit it so it doesn't totally eliminate the work. In fact, it may add more work because now you have to edit what was already said and correct what was wrong. Let's assume best case, it works, and most of the time it's a fairly easy view of what happened. But the other two problems are, so the hypothesis is you have addressed burnout, but does it improve productivity? And secondly, or third, is there a return on investment? So in other words, if you're the chief financial officer of a large multi-hospital system and somebody shows up with an ambient AI solution saying, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, your doctors are going to love it. Well, your doctors may love it, but you're spending a lot of money to put this ambient system into the hospital. And the CFO is more interested in the return on investment and the dollars and the cents. I'm not saying they're disregarding the effect of the burnout and the implication of the burnout, because the second level cause is if these people are burning out, they quit. Well, now you have a big problem with manpower, and the cost of manpower turnover is enormous. So the CFO is not only interested in the financial return on investment, but the indirect cost of manpower turnover because the technology is burning them out. So when you actually look and dig deep down inside, how do you define productivity? What does that mean? And how do you define the ROI? I think it's fair to say that at this point, most CFOs and most chief executives are saying, we can't define the ROI. It's too early. There are too many variables. There's too many moving parts. There's too many unintended consequences and secondary effects. And we just can't get our arms around this in terms of the dollars and cents. But when you have doctors come up to you and say, God bless you, what took you so long? Then that means something. But unfortunately, it's not the total answer.
I totally agree with you. But then I think whatever we say, entrepreneurship or the AI entrepreneurship or intro, extra, and the other thing, I think in the hospital environment, the thing what we need to bring is an innovation culture. And we need to push our people, whichever the position they take in the hospital, to question the operational issues, to question what they do, the practice, and come up with the recommendations. So then we can, with this way, improve the care, the sick care or the health care, and then we can bring a new approach. And this also can be identified as the innovation later on. But the problem what we have, Dr. Arlen, and I'm sure you have also gone through this in several hospitals with your other friends, is to bring this culture into the operations. So now I need some recommendation from you. I mean, many leaders are listening us. How can we bring an innovation culture to our hospital and then push our people to think out of box and bring us the solutions, because I can see this in many areas. In my previous hospital, one of our IT members, he came and then he said that, look, we have several services and then lots of announcements here in the reception, here in the patient room, here in the doctor room. Then he said, why don't we create something like a QR code, and this QR code will lead the people to one website page, and on this website page we will have all these circulars or the announcements or the mandatory documents from MOH or from the state, federals, XYZ. Then he said, let's keep them over there. We will have a clean place. And today everyone has the smartphone. They can look at it. It was a great solution. And you know what happened? We did this at that time in my hospital. And I was just traveling to, a course in London. When I went there, I found a company. A company is actually selling this service as a service to the hospitals. Then I said, gosh, we made it at home ourselves, thanks to the recommendation from our IT engineer. But then I want to see more recommendations like that in my hospital. So how can the CEOs and executives, you think, can bring this kind of innovation culture to their hospitals? What is your recommendation?
So there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are worthy of note. One is, what is a culture? Well, the simple answer is basically how we do things around here. And the culture is really driven by the chief executive or the leadership team. So number one, the leadership team sets the pace. It's people are watching how you do stuff. Actions speak louder than words. You do what you say you're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all another conversation about how do you set the culture, let alone scale it, and how do you maintain it if you do a merger and acquisition. So that's a whole different story. But to answer more specifically your question, so I think there are 3 levels to this analysis. So in other words, how do we get more good ideas to patients at my place? That's the question. Number one, you have to have a personal innovation mindset. So this is at the personal individual level. And that means that if you are going to go down this road, I believe there's 3 basic things you need to get your head around. One is means, mindset, and motivation. In other words, the clinical mindset is different than the entrepreneurial mindset. They're 2 overlapping circles when you're dealing with clinicians who are trying to innovate. And that just requires education, knowledge, skills, abilities, practice, competencies, etc. So one is mindset, and that's probably the most important. The second are the means. In other words, do I have the intellectual property, the property, plant, and equipment, the money, the support, a sponsor, people? Do I have the means to do this where I am working? And if I look at the landscape and it seems to me, I say to myself, look, I can knock myself out, but I'm not going to go anywhere with this QR code. I'm not doing it. So it's like, I just don't think that that it's worth it. So that's number 2. So that's the responsibility of, again, leadership, to provide that culture that if you come up with a good idea, we're going to be there and we got your back. And number 3, so means, mindset, motivation. If you're not motivated to do this internally, this is not about money. This is not about perks. This is not about promotion and tenure. This is not about academic credentials. It's too hard to do it if you're not internally motivated to keep going. And the way I phrase this is, you make it personal, but you don't take it personally. It has to be something personal that makes your clock tick, and you're not going to stop. But the likelihood is, whether you're working in a corporate place or whether you're working outside, you're going to fail. Or the organization is going to stop you like a grape, and they're just not interested. We've tried that before. Well, we've heard this, a million different reasons. So you have to be persistent. So that's number 1. You have to have the personal equipment. Number 2, you have to have an organizational culture of innovation. And that goes through a whole number of steps, a lot of which overlap with the personal one. And then finally, if you're going to get involved with digital health or drugs or devices, again, there's a separate pathway to lead you through those things. And it has to be very clear. It has to be, here are the steps you need to take. Here are the benchmarks. Here are the timelines. Here's when we're going to assess it. Here's where we're going to stratify it in terms of our strategy. Is it aligned with the corporate strategy? All kinds of things like that. So I believe it's a 3-layer process. 1 is personal, 2 is organizational, and 3 is systemic. And the systemic part, for example, how does your healthcare system work in your country? Well, in the United States, I mean, you've heard all kinds of stories about what's going on in the United States, but it's the same story in Ghana or in England or in, I don't care where it is, but there are these systemic issues that either accelerate innovation, create business models that are favorable, or they eliminate them and they just discourage everybody from doing anything. So, and one doesn't work without the other. You could have the most motivated individual within your organization who has a terrific idea, and the system, unquote, will simply annihilate them. So you have to have a system that is, and unfortunately or fortunately, sick care is a multi-engineering systems problem. It's not a silver bullet that is going to solve it. You're talking about social determinants of health. You're talking about equity. You're talking about reimbursement, government policies, tariffs, you name it. There's all kinds of stuff that's going to get in your way. So, and it's unpredictable, whether it's COVID or tariffs or elections or God knows what. So you just have to be able to have that mindset to negotiate the black swans, because you're going to see it.
I think persistency is very important, and then we expect our physicians and then our caregivers to be ready for any kind of fights, as just you mentioned. Dr. Arlen, you just mentioned mindset, means, and motivation. Actually, with this way, you gave us the formula and how a hospital can set this culture, and also a young physician tomorrow, if he has an idea, if she has an idea, you're just telling us the persistency is important. You have to be persistent, and then you should not give up. You should continue working on this issue. So now the question what I want to ask, I'm sure you are in touch with too many entrepreneurs, and then you have mentored many. So can you give us a couple life examples? I mean, what kind of innovations you came across, the ones that you liked, and then the ones really inspired you from physicians, from nurses, or from caregivers? Couple examples I'm sure would be great for the listeners to hear from you.
So a typical example is a parent who has a child with an incurable illness, and they looked all around. They can't find anything. They can't find a doctor. So if they have the means and the wherewithal and the perseverance, they create a system. They create, in some instances, a biopharma company to treat the illness. I mean, there's a very famous case study, actually, that they use in a Harvard Business School about a guy who was a shrimp tycoon in Louisiana who had a child with a hematologic disorder that was uncurable. And he spent the rest of his life dedicated to a biotech company to cure this kid. There's all kinds of stories of people that have horrible experiences with the system. Nobody was listening to me. I'm tired of all these clipboards. I mean, I don't know what you guys are doing with patient experience. It's horrible. They always come up. I mean, they're all these, or let alone the money problem where I can't afford this. I can't afford the out-of-pocket, nobody's insurance, prior authorization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many, and in fact, most big-time entrepreneurs that we hear about around the world have, if you dig deep enough, they have these stories where they actually, in some instances, are psychopathies. The good news is, if these are terrible people, sometimes they actually come up with significant societal benefit On the other hand, sometimes they don't.
Well, I think we're all somehow, I mean, we owe to these people, and then these people are the one who are changing our lives. Yeah, and let's look at the Steve Jobs. If we look at the Steve Jobs, we can hear the same mean stories, but this guy changed all our life, and today, thanks to him, I mean, all our life has changed, and then we have much productive life with his products, what he was able to create. So I think we know the way. We need to just encourage our people to think out of the box and do not limit themselves and share the ideas and question the practice, especially for our physicians and the nurses. And definitely, I'm sure they already have lots of ideas, but then they're looking for an encouragement. And I hope this episode will be the encouragement for them, and then they can go to your platform, they can follow you, and then they can come up with the solution and they can see the support. So, Dr. Arlen, I really appreciate your time. This was a very insightful conversation. And then I myself, I learned a lot. And you also have built a global platform. Maybe just you can explain the global platforms, web domain, and the things, and then our listeners can follow you from this platform. They can also, check out the recommendations from that.
Sure. If you're interested, our website is www.soapnet.org. And as I said, we provide, it's a subscription model. So the annual fee is $80 US dollars. It's pretty cheap. And we make exceptions for people in countries that can't afford it, or students or other people. So I wouldn't let that get in the way. We provide education, lots of it, either online or on site, because we have these chapter meetings and we work with national organizations. And we provide, so in addition to education, we provide access to resources, networks, mentors, experience, peer support, and non-clinical career guidance. So if you're interested in all of this stuff, you sign up, and then but the onus of this, you don't get anything out of it if you don't put anything into it. And the onus is on you. I mean, we can't make you do this. If this is something that you are motivated to do, but you're trying to develop the competencies to be successful doing this, we can help you with that. But it's really up to you whether you get this thing over the goal line or not.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Again, thanks for your time. It was a great, joyful discussion. I really enjoyed a lot. And listeners, you can follow Dr. Arlen on his LinkedIn profile. He shares regularly on AI and then digital health and physician leadership posts. I follow him. I enjoy reading. And thanks again for your time, Dr. Arlen. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for
as always, my pleasure, sir. As always, thank you for tuning into the Chief Healthcare Officer podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your colleagues who are passionate about the future of the healthcare and then healthcare leadership. Thank you so much. Have a great day.